Part 94. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 931. Chapter 931. The past is like smoke in the clouds. So, classmate Li Xiaoli laughed happily. After finishing laughing, he asked her more cautiously, "Shall we move all the things here? Then sell the house and don't come back. Our family of 3 plus Xiaorui can't live in such a small villa." Xiaoling suddenly realized his true intention. "Are you jealous?" From her point of view, through the bright floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see a corner of Pei Xian's villa next door. Li Lei admitted openly, "I don't like you living too close to him. I've locked Sutang in the hospital, so you should stay away from Pei Xian, okay?" Xiaoling thought about it, and it was the same reason. She is already married, so there is no need to make her loved ones uncomfortable over these trivial matters, not to mention that she is pregnant now. In view of her previous experience of being pregnant with Xiao Shaowai, she is indeed worried that Pei Xian will do something again. So, the two of them packed up and moved the next day. There aren't many things that need to be moved, mainly her clothes, Xiao Shaowai's toys, and the cat named Mao Tuanzi. She quickly packed it up, and when she was about to leave, Xiaoling dug out something in the bedroom. It was a beautifully carved box. It was locked and opened. It was filled with all kinds of bracelets, necklaces, earrings, and hair accessories, as well as items such as dresses, handbags, silk scarves, and bank cards. They were all gifts from Pei Xian. Long ago, she sealed up all the things that the man gave her. The value of these things was enough to keep several wealthy families fed and clothed for the rest of their lives. She gently touched those valuable items with her slender white fingers. Unknowingly, she felt a little emotional in her heart. In the blink of an eye, so many stormy waves passed. Behind him, footsteps came. Xiaoling. Xiaoling turned around and saw Li Lei. She was still standing next to the box, not moving, her eyes lowered, and her voice sounded like a sigh. "These things are not suitable to take to your new home." Li Lei came over and saw them too. "With just a little thought, I understood the origin of these things." "Give it back to him," he suggested through gritted teeth. Xiaoling shook her head. She didn't want to see that man again, so why bother with all the trouble? After stroking the objects with her fingers a few more times, she finally made a decision: bury them in the backyard, let this piece of history become dusty along with the objects, turn into mud, and never be opened again. Li Lei nodded. This was already a compromise idea. He helped her carry her things downstairs, dug up the rose bushes in the backyard, and put the boxes in them. "Cover the soil layer by layer." Her face was covered with mud, and she covered the last mud with him. There was a touch of sadness under her butterfly-like eyelashes. Deep in her heart, something felt empty, and she silently said to herself, "Goodbye, Pei Xian." Got windy. The rose petals were blown away. Separated by a courtyard wall and half a bush of flowers, behind the study window on the second floor next to the villa, a man was watching them quietly. He was wearing a finely crafted smoky gray plaid shirt with dark patterns and a waistcoat of the same color. His tall figure was like that of a god, and his stern features looked like knives and axes in the dim light. Looking at the man and woman under the rose bush, his fingers unconsciously tightened on the window frame. "Xiaoling. Are you moving out? Move with that man to a place where I can never touch him again?" A heartbreaking pain came, and Pei Xian felt the pain as if his heart was tightening, which was almost unbearable. He looked a little pale, even his breathing was a little stagnant, and his eyes gradually became gloomy. "Sir." Zhou's mother called him worriedly from the door. "She has already asked the servant next door. Today is Miss Ling's moving day, and Miss Ling is already pregnant. Soon, her and Mr. Li's second baby will be born." Zhou's mother looked at her husband distressedly. He was really not worth wasting his time on that woman. Pei Zion behind the window seemed unaware of Zhou Ma's arrival, still watching silently. He saw that her long hair was a little scattered among the flowers, and the man beside her gently brushed her hair behind her ears. She smiled and said something, and put a hand gently on her belly. So the man also smiled and helped her up with a gentle expression. She is pregnant. Pei Zion used an affirmative sentence, not a question. Zhou's mother's heart skipped a beat. Who is this person who kills 1,000 people and talks nonsense? Sir, it must be hard to hear this news, right? She couldn't help but said to him, who said this nonsense? About wooing. Pei Zion said, I know. His voice was dark, but his tone was firm. He was familiar with her every look and expression, and knew the happy glow on her face when she was pregnant, which nothing could replace. She buried all the things he had given her and was pregnant with another man's child. Pei Zion's heartache worsened and he stooped slightly. Zhou's mother said, Sir, stop looking. The overseas phone number on the desk has not been hung up yet. There are still many people waiting for you to go back for a conference call. He was in the middle of the meeting when he heard the sound of cars in front of the door. The people next door were moving and immediately left behind a number of important directors, looking here and there in silence. Pei Zion whispered, hang up for me. As soon as he finished speaking, a gust of wind blew. As if he couldn't bear the small breeze, he suddenly coughed while holding onto the wall. He was coughing for a long time and almost couldn't breathe. Zhou's mother quickly patted his back thousands of times to help him breathe. It took him a long time before he recovered. Sir, would you like to go to the hospital? Zhou's mother felt very distressed. You've been coughing a lot during this period and you're not in good spirits. You won't be able to keep up like this for a long time. He ignored Zhou Ma at all and walked downstairs step by step. Sir. Where are you going, sir? Zhou's mother became anxious and hurriedly followed. In front of the villa. Xiaoling nestled in Li Lei's arms, watching the driver and servants packing the things to be taken away one by one, with a peaceful and lazy smile. However, inadvertently, I caught a glimpse of a man walking out of the door of the villa next door. He was wearing a smoky gray plaid shirt with dark patterns. It was the same one she had given to him many years ago. It was already very old, with some slight wear and tear on the corners. There were stains, but he still cherished it and ironed it perfectly. He walked towards them step by step. She unconsciously broke out of Kong Liliai's arms and stood up straight. Li Lei frowned, but did not stop her. He just looked at Pei Zion with an unkind expression. What do you want to do? Pei Zion ignored him and only looked at Xiaoling intently. She was indeed going to be a mother. The corners of her eyes and eyebrows had a relaxed and peaceful luster. She was so beautiful and refreshing. She just looked up at him in the sunshine, just like she had done when they first met many years ago, a little strange but touching. His heart throbbed violently again. I suddenly remembered that today is the Chinese Valentine's Day. Is this a fancy way of abusing a dog by Xiaoling and Xiaolei? 233333. By the way, I touched Pei's big dog head. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day, everyone. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 932. Chapter 932, Cherish Each. Xiaoling is a little timid. Thinking of the time I met him, that time, in the dark study room of his villa, he pressed her in front of the desk and forcibly unbuttoned her clothes. This man is a dangerous person. No matter where he is or what he encounters, he cannot let her go. People take things lightly. Her back straightened slightly and she looked at him warily. His voice was dry, leaved. She said, Li Lei and I got married, and of course we have to move to a new home. I also wish you can find your other half as soon as possible. Wish you find your other half soon. The words coming out of her mouth caused him more pain than anyone else. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into his heart. Pei Zion looked down at her. I only love you. Li Lei looked hesitant. This man was too arrogant. Did he think that his real husband was dead? Xiaoling said, the past is over, let's each cherish it. It's good for everyone to take care of each other. There was a dark light floating in Pei Zion's eyes. Not far away, he saw the maid closing the door and hanging the word for sale on the house number surrounded by flowers. Sell me your house, he said. This time, Xiaoling also felt a little unhappy in her heart. Pei Zion, why are you holding on to the past and refusing to let go? We have already cleared up the relationship. You are handsome and elegant, and you have a successful career. How many good girls are willing to wait to be chosen by you? Forgot. I am good to you and good to me. Pei Zion smiled slightly, but the smile did not reach his eyes. Liang Qing? We will never be divided. Xiaoling said coldly, please give way. Li Lei and I are about to get in the car. Pei Zion didn't give in. What you owe me, what I owe you, I will keep giving up forever and ever. Xiaoling didn't want to continue to quarrel with him. However, when she mentioned the word "oh," something flashed through her mind like lightning. In the past 2 days, when she was counting her belongings and preparing to move, she really wanted to. Come on, what else does Pei Zion owe her? Where is Kinga? That horse of mine. She raised her head and asked Pei Zion, give me back my Kinga, and I will sell the villa to you. This time, it was Pei Zion's turn to be slightly startled. Xiaoling was a little anxious. I keep my word. Since he wants the villa, let him take it. Even if she refuses to sell it, he has countless ways to steal it from the next family. It's better to take advantage of now and exchange the villa for the horse that is loyal to her, Kinga. It is very old now, right? But it doesn't matter, she will take good care of it. Pei Zion's voice was hoarse. Kinga? He's dead. What dead? No, I don't believe it. Xiaoling murmured, it is a famous horse with such a noble bloodline and has always been in good health. It is said that it will not die so soon. Have you abused it? Xiaoling, in your heart, am I that kind of person? Pei Zion's voice was a little sad. Xiaoling stopped talking, but her eyes clearly said yes. Seeing the stalemate between the two, Li Lei took a step forward, held Xiaoling's hand, and cleverly placed it between her and Pei Zion. Let's go, Xiaoling, you are just pregnant, and the doctor told you to rest. Let's talk about Kinga later. Pei Zion felt another pain in his heart. She was indeed pregnant. He looked at her, his expression full of hurt, anger, pain of betrayal, and reluctance. She didn't dare to look any further. She was so confused that she hurriedly followed Li Lei into her car. The car slowly drove away from the villa area. Along the way, Xiaoling was in a bad mood. She rested her head on Li Lei's shoulder and looked at the passing city scenery outside the window without saying a word. Li Lei hugged her gently. Don't worry, I'm going to investigate Kinga's matter. It may not be really dead. Maybe Pei Zion just doesn't want to return it to you. She whispered, I'm a little uneasy. Li Lei kissed her. I'm here. She looked at the scenery outside the window for a while and then spoke slowly. At that time, I was reincarnated and had no relatives. I was targeted by Pei Zion and still owed so many debts. No one knew me, and anyone could bullying me, even you, Li Lei. At the beginning, you just wanted to treat me as your lover. She murmured about the past. Li Lei felt a little distressed. I'm sorry. At that time, he had never fallen in love with any girl and didn't know what love was at all. He also hung out with prodigal sons like Jin Yifei and Du Yunfen. Changing female companions was like changing clothes. How normal thing. If you have a crush on a girl from a mediocre background, your first reaction is of course to be a lover, not a serious girlfriend. However, if he could have predicted what happened later, he would have held her hand and gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the certificate the first time he saw her. Maybe, there would not have been so many twists and turns. Xiaoling's butterfly-like eyelashes fluttered slightly, only Kinga recognized me at a glance. You don't know how much comfort it gave me at that time, I blame myself. After so many years, I didn't even think of using it. Take it back to you. Lilei, I'm really scared, if it really dies, I will never forgive myself in this life. As she spoke, tears oozed from the corners of her eyes. Perhaps because she became more fragile after becoming pregnant, Lilei took care of her more carefully. When I get home later, I will go investigate Qing Ji's matter. I will go with you. No, you're pregnant. Lilei refused. Xiaoling turned sideways and looked at him. Lilei, I have to do something for it. No matter whether it is dead or alive, there must be an explanation. If I don't find out for myself, I won't be able to sit still. Lilei couldn't resist her, so he had to agree. Okay, let's go together. The next day, it was sunny weather. On the outskirts of the city, Pei's private resort. The Pei family has lived in S city for generations, and has been running a private resort on the outskirts of the city for several generations. It is large in scale and has a quiet environment. No one in the entire S city family can match it, not even the Li family. Pei Ziyan looked at a horse in the stable. The whole body is fiery red, the fur is oily and smooth, the body is strong, and the deep eyes are introverted. No matter who sees it, they will exclaim, what a horse! It's a pity that this horse's leg is lame. No matter how hard it tries to stand upright, it can be seen that it is higher and lower, and it can no longer run. Pei Ziyan looked at it for a long time. The bright sunshine at noon shone on him, reflecting his extremely cold expression, and he didn't know what he was thinking. This horse was maimed by him. At that time, he didn't know that Ye Xingling was the reincarnation of his beloved Xiaoling. He was angry that Kinga was being intimate with a woman other than Xiaoling, so he beat Kinga's legs in a rage. But now, facts have proven that Kinga was right back then. It must have recognized her at first sight. This disabled leg seemed to be mocking him, mocking his arrogance and ignorance of people. He hurt the woman he loved over and over again, and only then pushed the woman he regarded as his life to someone else. Embrace. He looked at Qing Ji, his expression gradually darkened. If Kinga could speak, it would definitely want to say to Pei Dada, Mater is mentally retarded equals. In addition, I have already planned Pei Dada's ending according to his character. This ending is not chosen by me, but rather by his own choice. I think it's pretty good. Cough cough cough. After it's finished, Pei Dada and Xiaoling's extra story will be written. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 933. Chapter 933, Singing. Bring the gun, he ordered Chu Chen behind him. Over the years, Chu Chen has already become the general manager of Emperor Entertainment, with great power and control over everything. However, no matter how beautiful he was outside, he was as respectful as ever in front of Pei Ziyan, just like the young man who came to Pei Ziyan with all his money and came to Pei Ziyan to pray for a good future. This is also the reason why he has still won Pei Ziyan's trust over the years. He silently handed a clean pistol to Pei Ziyan and took 2 steps back. Pei Ziyan raised his gun and pointed it at the crimson and beautiful horse from a distance. Sir, guessing what he was going to do, the horse breeder's eyes were full of pleading. He had already developed a deep relationship with Kinga over the years, and he really couldn't bear to see this beautiful and proud horse shot alive. Pei Ziyan was unmoved and pulled the trigger. With a bang, Qing Ji fell down, blood staining the ground beneath him. Smoke was rising from the muzzle of the gun, and the barrel was hot, burning the palm of his hand. Pei Zion looked at the dead horse not far away and said in his heart, I'm sorry, I can't let Xiao Ling find out that you are disabled, so I have no choice but to let you die. Don't worry, I will build a beautiful tomb for you so that she can come back to see you often. In fact, when she asked about the horse yesterday, he decided to kill it. Its legs were broken at first glance, and there were many old scars from being whipped on its body. How could Xiao Ling see these marks? Death is the best burial. He lowered his gun and handed it back to Chu Chen. Chu Chen whispered, Boss. His voice was tight and a little strange. Pei Zion turned around and realized that there were two more people on the grass under the sun. The young woman was wearing loose maternity clothes and was looking at him in disbelief. Her figure was shaky, as if she couldn't bear the blow. If the man next to her hadn't held her up, she would have fallen down at any time. Xiao Ling. His voice was dry and tight. When did she come? Are all the staff at the villa freeloading? Why didn't anyone notice them or call the police? A storm was brewing in Pei Zion's heart. At this moment, he decided that all the staff would be punished enough when he returned. However, on the surface, he just whispered, listen to me. Xiao Ling didn't listen to him at all. With Li Lei's support, she walked step by step to the dead Kinga. She slowly squatted down and gently touched the horse's beautiful cheek with trembling hands. Kinga. Her tears fell into its wide-open eyes. She was the one who harmed it? If she hadn't offered to buy Kinga back yesterday, wouldn't it have suffered such a tragic fate? She was heartbroken and couldn't help herself. Xiao Ling. Li Lei hugged her, stop crying, be careful of the child in your belly. She was still crying, running her fingers along Kinga's cheek and caressing its elegant neck, feeling its fur that was still warm, and the hideous, old scars covered by the fur. How could this happen, she murmured to herself, examining it eagerly with her fingers. It was fine when we were at the Nanshan Jockey Club. Why did it suffer so many injuries in just a few years? She stroked it with her fingers. When it reached its hind legs, it stopped. There was a trace of broken bone there, which was obviously half shorter than the other leg. Li Lei also saw the old scars. It should have been interrupted by someone, he said. Xiao Ling's hands shook even more, and with great difficulty, she forced herself to stand up, raised her head, and asked Pei Zion loudly, why do you abuse it and kill it? It's just a horse, why do you even hurt it? Don't let it go. Pei Zion remained silent, not knowing how to answer. Chu Chen said from the side, Miss Ling, I made this horse lame. The boss has been rehabilitating it over the years. Because the rehabilitation has not been successful, I can't bear to let it continue to endure pain, so I ended its life. He spoke in a sad and sincere tone, looking at Xiao Ling. Xiao Ling shook her head and laughed sadly and sarcastically, do you think I'm stupid? Chu Chen, you are really a loyal dog. If you say that you broke Pei Zion's other things, I believe it, but I don't believe you can still stand here despite breaking my things. You don't have to take the blame for your master, I know he hurt Kinga himself, you beast. She said the last sentence while looking at Pei Zion. Pei Zion looked tense. Xiao Ling. Being caught, he really didn't know how to defend himself. He just said feebly, it's just a horse, I'll give you a new one. That's my horse, she said, crying, and slowly knelt down to look at Kinga. The remaining warmth from the dead horse gradually dissipated and became colder, leaving her heart broken into pieces. Kinga, Kinga. She called out in a choked and broken voice, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. If it hadn't been for an owner like her, such a bad owner, he should have continued galloping around the racecourse and attracted countless cheers and cheers. He was so beautiful, and had so many horses chasing him. He was once the proud queen of the Nanshan Club, and now, but ended up like this. She cried more and became more and more sad, and her whole body fell on the horse. Li Lei was extremely anxious. Xiao Ling. Cheer up. If it has a spirit in the sky, it will never see you so sad. However, no matter how he tried to persuade him, he couldn't stop it. He regretted that he should not have allowed her to take her to find a horse due to her temper, and even broke through the blockade of the Pei family villa to find out. If they visited through the main entrance properly, then Pei Ziyan would have enough time to deal with the horse corpse. Even if Xiao Ling could not discover the truth about Qing Ji's injury and death, it would be better than now, when she cried so hard that her heart broke and the color of the world changed. She is fragile during pregnancy, and the smallest thing can make her inner softness overflow. She cried, hugged the neck of her beloved horse, and passed out. Xiao Ling, Li Lei shouted worriedly and picked her up. Prepare the room, call the doctor. Pei Ziyan, who was stunned in front of the stable, came to his senses and hurriedly called for the family doctor. The family doctor examined Xiao Ling with a solemn expression. Lifu, oh no, Miss Ling's condition is very bad. Excessive sadness has caused a threatened miscarriage. She needs to preserve the fetus and rest. I will give her an injection right away. Li Lei stopped him. I can't trust you. You just need to monitor her physical signs and provide the most basic care. No injections or medicines are allowed. The Li family's doctor and ambulance are already on the way. What you need to do, the key is to ensure that her condition does not deteriorate during this period. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 934. Chapter 934, A Notorious Reputation. The doctor was very embarrassed. Mr. Li, it is difficult to stabilize the patient's condition without injections. Li Lei leaned over and held Xiao Ling's hand, whispering in her ear, Xiao Ling, hold on, you will be fine. He straightened up, looked at the doctor, and changed his face to a cold face. Be sure to be steady. Considering her condition, if she has any shortcomings, I want you to bury her with her. He knew very well that Pei Ziyan wished that the child in Xiao Ling's belly would be aborted immediately. How could he trust the Pei family's doctors? The doctor was complaining in his heart. Yes, on the way here, I received private instructions from Mr. Pei. It is true that he was asked to wait for an opportunity to kill the child, but Mr. Pei also ordered that Miss Ling's life should be saved at all costs. If she really has whatever the case, Mr. Pei would do it himself without Li Lei taking action. The doctor wiped his sweat and said, please think again about the use of injections. Pei Ziyan also said to Li Lei, now is not the time to be impulsive and let the doctor give her an injection. Li Lei's eyes were like a wolf, looking at Pei Ziyan ferociously. Get out. Pei Ziyan, Li Lei, don't forget whose territory this is. Li Lei didn't waste any time talking to him. He just pulled out his gun and hit Pei Ziyan in the leg with a bang. I saw a blood flower blooming on Pei Ziyan's iron suit trousers. His body slowly fell down, holding on, half kneeling in the gurgling blood. Li Lei, you. Li Lei's gun was still pointed at him, his hand steady. The doctor was so frightened that he only remembered to scream at this time. However, as soon as the scream came out, Li Lei's cold voice rang out, treat Xiao Ling well, adults and children. If one is missing, I will chop off your hands and feet. If two are missing, I will chop off your hands and feet. I'll chop you up and feed it to the sharks. Don't doubt it, there are countless lives that have passed through my hands, not least of which is yours. The doctor's legs were shaking, and he knew deeply that the man in front of him was not joking. The second young master of the Li family has had a bad reputation since a long time ago. It is a real underworld. He wouldn't think it was just a child playing house. Glancing at Pei Ziyan, who was kneeling in a pool of blood on the ground, the doctor tremblingly picked up his equipment, not daring to mention injections or medicine, and took care of Xiao Ling in the most primitive and careful way. The stalemate lasted for an unknown amount of time. Finally, someone pushed the door open and came in. Boss, the Li family's ambulance. Chu Chen stopped abruptly mid-sentence and looked at the scene inside the door in disbelief. Pei Xian's body was wet with blood, his face was as pale as paper, and Li Lei's gun was pointed at his forehead. "Boss," Chu Chen shouted, ignoring the black muzzle of the gun, and ran to him and knelt down. "Are you okay? Hold on. I will help you get treated right now." Pei Xian grabbed his hand with all his strength and said with difficulty, "I'm fine, Xiaoling. How long has it been and he still cares about her?" Chu Chen was so furious that he wished he could knock Pei Xian unconscious with a knife, but he didn't dare. He could only glance sideways at Xiaoling, and then at Li Lei who was holding a gun. "Li Lei," Chu Chen shouted, "if something happens to the boss, do you think Ye Xingling will really have no grudges against you? Put down the gun and let me take him for treatment." Li Lei looked gloomy, but slowly put down the gun. "Xiaoling," Pei Xian still refused to leave. Chu Chen resisted the urge to hit him. "Doctor, how is Ye Xingling's condition?" "The patient's condition is stable," the doctor replied cautiously. "There is nothing serious." Chu Chen said to Pei Xian, "Did you hear that? Ye Xingling is fine. The Li family's ambulance has arrived, and she will receive the most appropriate treatment. On your side, if you have something wrong, wouldn't it be an advantage for Li Lei? You have to be in good health to get her back." "Li Lei. Broker Chu, you are quite talented at comforting people. Are you treating me like a gunman?" Chu Chen didn't care about Li Lei's face. He looked at Pei Xian worriedly. "Boss, let me help you treat the gunshot wound. You can't become disabled." Pei Xian nodded weakly and was helped out by him. Over there, the Li family's first aid team also came in and moved the unconscious Xiaoling away in an orderly manner. They did not send Xiaoling home, but went to the best maternal and child hospital in the city, the same hospital where Xiaoling did her pregnancy test when she was pregnant with Xiaowai. Living in the VIP ward of the hospital, the doctor said, "Fortunately, it was delivered in time. I can rest peacefully and observe for a while." Li Lei finally breathed a sigh of relief. After 1 day and 1 night, Xiaoling woke up, and what she saw was a white ceiling. There were green plants by the window with little white flowers blooming on them. They were beautiful, graceful, and quietly ostentatious. And in front of her eyes, there was blood floating across her eyes from time to time. That was Kinga lying in a pool of blood, and the numerous scars all over her body. She trembled painfully. Li Lei beside the bed immediately realized that she was awake. "Xiaoling." She didn't speak, so he looked at her with concern and hugged her gently. When he felt that her body temperature and breathing were normal, he breathed a sigh of relief, but what he said was vicious. "I really want to kill you." She reached out and slowly hugged his waist. He buried his head in her hair and said dully, "Do you know how worried I am? If I had known this, I would never have taken you to find Kinga. Xiaoling, you are in a special period now. If something happens to my child, I will never forgive myself in this life." He became more and more excited as he spoke, with a hint of fear in his voice. Xiaoling hugged him tighter. "I'm sorry." She didn't know that things would turn out like this. It was too sudden and she was not mentally prepared. Originally, her worst plan was to see Kinga's grave, or Pei Xian was unwilling to let her take Kinga away alive, but she didn't expect to see the murder scene right in front of her. A beautiful and proud horse. Bang, it's gone. Tears streaming down my cheeks. Li Lei's face was close to hers, and he felt it immediately. He held her face in a panic. "Xiaoling, don't cry. I didn't mean to be cruel to you. I was wrong. Don't be sad." She shed tears, shook her head, hugged him and sobbed. "I don't know how long I cried. I finally held back my tears and then asked, 'Qingji, what happened next?'" Li Lei felt a little aggrieved. "Why didn't you ask if our baby was okay?" A fleeting smile appeared on Xiaoling's Li. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 935. Chapter 935,000 Paper Cranes. Lilei also smiled. Well, the baby is fine. The doctor said he is very healthy. Then he told her the news about Kinga. It didn't suffer too much when it left. It was shot to death, which is a little comfort in the misfortune. I brought its bones back and plan to bury them at the headquarters. Pick one that can be seen. The location of our new house means that it will always be with you. I also plan to take the little Lei from the Nanshan Club back and keep it next to Kinga's grave. By the way, there will also be Mao and Mao Tuanzi, together with Xiaowai and Xiaoyui. The family will be very lively in the future. He tried to downplay Kinga's death to make her happy. Xiaoling hugged him for a while longer, still feeling a little sad. Kinga was just like her child. She had bred him herself, watched him be born, and took a special plane back from the UK. At that time, it was such a cute and beautiful pony, but now, it has ended up like this. Lilei seemed to know what she was thinking, and said softly, "Don't be too sad. You are still pregnant with the baby. When you are sad, the baby will be sad too. If Kinga knew that you were affecting the baby because of it, you won't be safe even under the 9 springs," he said and kissed her. She nodded, trying to collect her emotions. Lilei stayed with her for a long time and went out after dinner. There were still many family affairs waiting for him to deal with outside. Xiaoling was tossing and turning on the hospital bed alone, unable to sleep. As soon as she closed her eyes, the sound of the gunshot and the appearance of Qing Ji slowly falling to the ground appeared in her mind. She desperately tried to run forward, but was held back by Lilei. She heard her own voice shouting, "Kinga," then, Pei Xian turned around calmly. Thoughts are numerous and complicated. She didn't dare to close her eyes. She hugged the quilt and sat up on the bed with her knees bent, looking out the window at the boundless night. The night was very quiet. It was an early autumn weather, the stars were twinkling, and it was as cool as water. She was in a daze for a while, then suddenly heard the cell phone ringing on the bedside table. When she took it over and looked at it, the caller ID clearly read Pei Xian. "It's so late, why is he calling?" She looked at the number in silence and did not answer it. The bell rang tirelessly, and the sweet and slightly sad melody echoed in the ward. Is he here to apologize? Just like many times before, whenever he did something she didn't want to see, he would coax her with gentle words, but he didn't really reflect on his mistakes. He would still make them next time. He never cared about her at all. All he cares about is himself and an obedient toy. She looked at the flickering electronic screen in the darkness, pressed hang up, and added the man's name to the blacklist. From now on, I will never receive a call from him again. If I want to cut it off cleanly. Looking up at the stars, the night is as cool as water. She stayed in the hospital for a while, and her condition gradually stabilized. The fetus was stable, and the doctor said the baby was healthy. She thanked the doctor, was discharged from the hospital, and moved into the wedding room with Lilei on Yunhu Island. Lilei has been extremely busy these days, and many matters accumulated during the honeymoon period need to be dealt with. Xiaoling smiled and said that she didn't need him to accompany her as she had to deal with many matters at Feng Qianshang Company and prepare for moving to the headquarters. So the two of them were busy with their own affairs. She would get up every morning to dress up, and slowly enter Feng Qianshang's company in a nanny car. She would handle things leisurely but methodically, and her life would be regular and leisurely. However, such good days did not last for a few days. On this day, Xiaoling made a cup of scented tea and sorted out the unfinished music scores in the office. Suddenly she heard someone knocking on the door. It was Lin Yunan, and there was a man beside her, Chu Chen. "He must see you," Lin Yunan scratched his hair and said with some annoyance, "I can't stop you no matter what, it's like you've been shot." Xiaoling stopped what she was doing and looked at Chu Chen. It has nothing to do with your master for a long time." Chu Chen said, "Just the last thing." Xiaoling said, there is no such thing as the last thing. Just when she wanted to call the security guard, Chu Chen in a suit and tie had already walked in and put a large cardboard box in his hand in front of her. Miss Ling, this is a gift from the boss. Please open it and take a look. The paper box is very exquisite, made of dark blue purple dark grained craft paper, dotted with uniquely designed silver and white buckles. It is from a famous brand at first glance, and it is as gorgeous as the vast night sky. Because the phone couldn't be reached, did you send a gift? That man is always good at making her happy with all kinds of gifts. I am already Mrs. Li. Xiaoling was unmoved now. She did not touch the gorgeous cardboard box, but looked at Chu Chen coldly. Take it away, I don't want your boss's things. Chu Chen stood there without moving. This is really the last time, please accept it. There was a hint of pleading in his voice, which made Xiaoling a little surprised. How could Chu Chen, who had always been strong, become so weak? However, she had no intention of giving any good looks to Pei Xian's lackey. Get out. Chu Chen said, the boss treats you well, don't let him down. Lin Yunan, tell him to get lost. Xiaoling was a little angry. Chu Chen was grabbed by Lin Yunan's arm and dragged out, but he did not forget to make a last-ditch effort. Miss Ling, please open it and take a look. It's really just a small gift, made by the boss himself. When I came in, it had already passed after passing the security check here. The gift is safe, really. Do you think I'm afraid? A wave of annoyance surged into Xiaoling's heart, and her voice became harsh. Chu Chen, I tell you, I don't need the garbage your boss sent me. If you like it, just keep it for yourself. If you can't just give alms to any beggar on the roadside, there are many people who are grateful to you and your master. An angry look appeared on Chu Chen's face. Yes, Ling, don't go too far. Who went too far? Xiaoling sneered. Didn't Pei Xian think it was too much when he separated me and Li Lei? Didn't he think it was too much when he plotted to murder my Xiaohui? Didn't he think it was too much when he beat Kinga to death? Why, can't I just throw him a gift? She reached out and swept the exquisite brown paper box to the ground. Get out. Don't bother me with his garbage. The cardboard box rolled several times on the wooden floor and spread out. The contents fell to the floor, and they were all filled with colorful paper cranes. Xiaoling's angry voice suddenly stopped, and she was stunned when she looked at the colorful scenery. Thousands of paper cranes. When did that man give her a gift in 2 lifetimes that wasn't flowers, jewelry, clothes, bags or real estate certificates? Give away whatever is expensive, give away whatever you can buy with money, nothing new. When did you start giving away paper cranes that are sentimental to little girls? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 936. Chapter 936. Something happened to the boss. A box full. It rolled to the floor, all over the room. Lin Yunan was also stunned, and even forgot to drag Chu Chen out. No, this successful general manager, great agent, Pei Xian's most trusted confidant, and powerful prime minister, traveled all the way from the emperor to Fengqianshan, broke into numerous blockades, and ignored cold looks and threats. Ridicule, just to send a box of paper cranes. This is the most expensive express delivery in history, right? The cost of delivering express is much higher than the value of the express itself. Lin Yunan looked confused. Is the emperor sick? There was a hint of sullenness in Chu Chen's voice. Yes, Ling, why are you so angry? The boss folded these paper cranes one by one. He has been thinking about you every day these days. I thank him. Xiaoling was very angry. At what point did Pei Ziyan act like a love saint to disgust people? She sneered, Chu Chen, you have been his lackey for so many years, and you have always spoken for him. It's a pity that I am no longer a child who is grateful for his kindness. He misses me? What if you really care about me, you won't do so many crazy things. Chu Chen, just be kind to me, pick up your master's garbage and get out. As he spoke, he was still not relieved, so he stepped on those paper cranes and crushed them hard, as if he wanted to crush the pain and hatred that had been accumulated in his heart for many years. The paper crane was quickly shattered under the ravage of high heels. Chu Chen's eyes burst out with anger, Yes Ling. Don't go too far. Xiaoling raised her head and looked at him with splitting eyes. She was stunned for a moment, and then sneered, Excessive? Chu Chen, don't you see that you can also be angry and know how to write the word excessive? Tell me, your master, what is the mission for you this time? She stepped on the broken paper cranes on the ground and came to him. Is it for you to make me change my mind and be happy? I'm sorry to disappoint you. Are you going to be punished? I advise you, stop following that beast, you will suffer retribution with him. Chu Chen's expression was cold and cruel, as if he wanted to eat someone. If Lin Yunan hadn't held him tightly, he would have thrown herself in front of Xiaoling and slapped the woman hard. It's you who will get retribution, Yes Ling. However, Xiaoling suddenly stopped talking and looked past him to behind him. The air becomes quiet. Behind him, beside the fine-grained wooden door, I saw Pei Ziyan standing there at some point. His tall figure seemed to be slightly stooped against the light, but his expression could not be seen clearly. Boss. Chu Chen also turned his head and saw Pei Ziyan. Pei Ziyan just looked at Xiaoling quietly, as if there was a world separated by a wooden door. Boss, that's not the case. Chu Chen suddenly became anxious and explained to Pei Ziyan incoherently, Miss Ling didn't mean to scold you, it was me who offended her and she was venting her anger on me. However, Xiaoling said, Pei Ziyan, what if I just scolded you on purpose? I don't care what kind of madness Chu Chen got, I have to take the responsibility on myself, but I will tell you clearly now, I'm scolding you. She raised her chin and looked at him provocatively, no matter how much you give me, I will never forgive you. I remember all the debts between us, in this life, no, forever, the thing I regret most is knowing you. After saying that, he opened another door of the office and walked out. It's autumn. The sun is clear and the breeze is cold in the sky garden of the company building. Xiaoling put her hands on the railing and looked down at the staff walking back and forth in the building. What kept coming to her mind was the scene where she just scolded Pei Ziyan. She seemed to see his expression clearly, but she didn't seem to see it clearly. The tall figure was hunched from beginning to end, and his gloomy eyes were constantly overlapping with the paper cranes trampled by her on the ground, which made her feel something deep in her heart. The place was empty, and it felt a little uncomfortable. What is there to feel uncomfortable about? Xiaoling, don't you care about him a long time ago? She lowered her head and asked herself, so what if he folded those paper cranes with his own hands? So what if you broke his heart? He hasn't hurt you enough times. She forced herself to raise her head and face the cold autumn sunshine. The sound of footsteps came from behind. She turned around and saw Chu Chen. The man was still wearing a suit and leather shoes, and his expression was solemn, as if he were mourning his heir. She didn't like seeing him very much and said something bad to him, why don't you get out? Chu Chen looked at her with a heavy and disgusted look, as if he were looking at the ugliest thing in the world. There is something that the boss has told me not to tell you, but I think it is necessary to let you know. I do not want to know. The boss has cancer. What? Pei Ziyan, got cancer. These words were like a bolt from the blue, exploding in Xiaoling's ears. She suspected that she was hallucinating, and stared at Chu Chen in disbelief. What did you say? Say it again. Chu Chen looked at her with disgust, repeated it coldly, and added, Yes Ling, you keep saying that I am a dog raised by the boss, but even dogs have feelings after being raised for a long time. What about you? You not even as good as a dog. She shook her head, not wanting to argue with him. Her mind was as chaotic as if she was dreaming. Impossible. Pei Zion is so powerful and insurmountable, how could he suddenly suffer from a terrible terminal illness? She asked softly, Are you kidding me? You deliberately lied to me, didn't you? How could I lie to you about such a thing? This time, Chu Chen sneered, or, in your heart, his life is only worth a joke. She still shook her head in disbelief. Pei Zion has been in her heart for a long time, a mountain, hard, stubborn, and insurmountable. She had never thought that such an unreachable mountain would collapse one day. The sky fell apart and the earth fell apart. An unprecedented fear gripped her. She stumbled to her feet, pushed Chu Chen away, and wanted to find Pei Zion to find out. The man is still in her office. The early autumn sunshine shines in through the glass windows, and the paper cranes all over the ground are messy and colorful. He squatted in this desolation, lowered his head, and smoothed away the traces of her trampling on the paper crane little by little. His movements were very slow and almost imperceptible, and his tall body was still hunched. Xiaoling never discovered that he also had times when he was sad and lonely. She stopped at the door, not having the courage to take a step forward. Pei Zion turned his back to her and wiped away the footprints on the paper crane little by little with his fingers. He occasionally coughed twice, a hollow cough that echoed in the silent space. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 937. Chapter 937 Sad Lung. Xiaoling has never noticed it. When did he start coughing? Occasionally, she remembered him standing in the wind on the day of moving, with a slight coughing sound when he spoke. Her heart sank a little bit. Could it be that, as Chu Chen said, he was suffering from a terminal illness? Looking at the man who was carefully picking up the paper crane, she wanted to rush forward and ask for explanation. However, she was afraid. What should she do if it was true? In the end, she just stood motionless by the door, thoughts swirling in her mind. Pei Zion cleaned up the colorful paper cranes, smoothed them one by one, and put them back into the dark blue-purple craft paper box that was somewhat damaged by her fall. Then, he fastened the box carefully, repaired the damage on it carefully, and wiped the dirt on it with his sleeves. Xiaoling's nose was sore. He had always been such a decent and dignified person, and he had never wiped something with his sleeves without caring about his image. He was so shabby. After a long while, he put the carton away, stood up and saw her, and was caught off guard. The fatigue and sadness on his face couldn't be hidden in time, and he was in a state of embarrassment. He tried his best to make him smile, but he only made an ugly and funny expression like crying. Xiaoling, he called in a hoarse voice, and when he saw her coming back, there was a sense of surprise in his voice. She couldn't help it anymore. Pei Zion. Don't think you can use Chu Chen to deceive me and make up all kinds of nonsense to make me change my mind. He was slightly startled. What? She yelled at him, You are still pretending. Chu Chen said you have cancer. It's so funny. You are so strong, how could you get that disease? Don't use such lame excuses to lie to others, okay? His eyes were lowered, covering his expression. After a long time, he said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let Chu Chen lie to you. Her heart sank to the bottom. She knew him too well, having been together for more than 20 years in 2 lifetimes, and she knew very well that if he really lied to her, he would not admit it so happily. It's true, right? Her voice was trembling. Pei Zion said, I lied to you. Why did you call me that night? He stopped talking and knew what night she was talking about, when she witnessed Ching Ji being shot and cried so much that she fainted and was sent to the hospital in an ambulance by Li Lei for rescue. And he was shot by Li Lei. Chu Chen took him to the hospital for treatment and did a full body examination. It was that night that I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Hand-holding the medical certificate, he stayed up all night in the luxurious single ward and opened his address book, but there was no one to talk to. Unknowingly, he dialed her number, but was hung up on. His expression was as gloomy as death. Xiaoling forced herself to calm down. What kind of cancer? Pei Ziyan was silent for a long time, and finally said, lung cancer. Show me the medical certificate. She wished she was dreaming. Xiaoling. Show me. She couldn't stand it anymore and suddenly shouted, Pei Ziyan, you are a psycho, a pervert, a devil, a beast. You can torture others, but why don't you let yourself go? Why don't you stay in the hospital when you are so sick? Don't you think you can die quickly enough? Pei Ziyan, you are just doing it for yourself, she cursed, and his expression changed every time. Just a bit bleak. Xiaoling lost her mind and rushed forward and grabbed him by the collar, you beast, villain. Haven't you done enough harm to me over the years? Now you still want to control me. Seeing it, it's not easy for me. We can be happy with Li Lei, we have so many babies and have our own life, looking forward to the birth of a new child, but you are actually sick. Why are you sick? Her voice gradually became choked, changed its tone, and became weak. Pei Ziyan's expression became even more bleak, looking at her sadly and desperately. Pei Ziyan, she cried, holding on to his finely crafted but worn-out shirt, unable to even stand steady. You are so bad. Why can't I let go? If something happens to you, tell me how to be happy with peace of mind. Her voice became increasingly hoarse, and her hand holding onto him became weaker and weaker. He didn't expect that she would say these words. His expression was shocked, and he stretched out his arms to hold her in his arms. Xiaoling, I'm sorry. He repeated it over and over again, regardless of her weak struggle. That day, Xiaoling followed him back and dug out the diagnostic report. Mother Zhou was wiping her tears beside her and told her, Miss Ling, you don't know how sad my husband has been over the years. Since you left, he hasn't had a good night's sleep. He often wakes up in the middle of the night, thinking you are still there and asking me, where's Xiaoling? My husband devoted all his time to work in order to miss you, but how could he miss you? Everything was on his mind. Slowly, he started to cough and still refused to look. Zhou's mother burst into tears. Finally, this time, Mr. Chu took him for a checkup. The doctor said that he had sad lung disease. The old maid was in a mess from crying. Xiaoling was about to cry again. Holding back her tears, she read the diagnosis letter at a glance: lung cancer, middle and late stage, followed by a bunch of terms, vague words such as metastasis and radiotherapy. Xiaoling felt weak all over and didn't know what to do. She felt like the sky was falling and the earth was falling. She was even more frightened than when she watched Li Lei fall off the cliff. Because she knew that if something happened to Li Lei, she could still die for his love, but what if something happened to Pei Ziyan? He is her God, her heaven, her immortal teacher, her father, her brother. And the love and hate between two lives. She originally thought that he was so indestructible that no matter what he suffered, he could always stand and be an eternal king. But at this moment, I realized that he was also a human being of flesh and blood. He would be born, old, sick, and die. Perhaps at some inadvertent turning point in his life, he would disappear from this world forever. She didn't know how she got back to her home. Li Lei finished his official duties early today and had a table full of sumptuous delicacies waiting for her at home. He was shocked when he looked at her face and said, Xiaoling, what's wrong with you? She shook her head and murmured to him as if sleepwalking, Pei Zion is sick. Li Lei frowned, is it a serious illness? He knew his woman well, and if it was just an ordinary illness, she would never be so devastated. Sure enough, Xiaoling said in a weak voice, cancer. She curled up and sat down on the sofa, hugged herself tightly, and asked herself in a low voice, as if asking Li Lei, what should I do if he dies? Although she now has a family, parents, husband, and cute child, but no one can replace that man's place in her heart. Although, she hates him. But he will always be the one who took her out of the orphanage and raised her up. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 938. Chapter 938 Entrustment. Li Lei sat down with her, everyone has his own destiny. After a moment of silence, he added, no matter what happens, I will always be with you. Xiaoling lowered her head for a long time and looked at Li Lei pleadingly, how about we move back to the headquarters later? I want to stay with him for a while longer, maybe it's the last time. Her voice gradually dropped, controlling her emotions. Li Lei hugged her, okay. But you have to promise me to take good care of yourself and the baby in your belly. You must always follow the bodyguards around you and don't go to dangerous places. Do you understand? The beloved woman is going to see that man. Li Lei felt as uncomfortable as thousands of steel needles sticking into his heart. However, making Xiaoling happy was more important than anything else. He knew that if he stopped her this time, she would have a knot in her heart for the rest of her life. Rather than letting her dwell on her guilt for Pei Zion, it would be better to end it once and for all and let her accompany him through the final journey of her life. Maybe in this way, she can let go completely. Thank you, Xiaoling said softly. Li Lei stayed with her for a while longer, until she felt sleepy and curled up in his arms and fell asleep. He looked at her sleeping face for a long time, gently kissed her eyelashes like butterfly wings, carried her back to the bed in the bedroom, and walked out. He went to find Pei Zion. In the Emperor's chairman's office, the man was as majestic as ever, with no sign of illness at all. He looked at Li Lei with a serious expression, I'm very busy and don't have time to talk nonsense with you. You are very busy, Li Lei said for Tat. You are so sick and have to take care of so many things you still have time to harass other people's wives. Who else in the world is busier than you? Pei Zion's pupils shrank slightly, did Xiaoling tell you? I don't like you calling her Xiaoling, that's not what you can call her. Li Lei was not polite to him, Pei Zion, Xiaoling said she would stay in the country with you, and I agreed. But I don't want her to be harmed in any way. If you dare to do anything to endanger her, I swear that the entire Pei family will be buried with you after your death. Both men knew very well that Pei Zion was the overlord and core of the entire emperor. If he died, no successor would be good enough to compete with Li Lei. He is even too young to properly select and cultivate successors. His illness came suddenly, and the transfer of power in the Pei family was interrupted. In this case, if Li Lei wanted to do something to the Pei family, it would be easy. Pei Zion looked gloomy, maybe before I die, I should get rid of this trouble of yours. Li Lei smiled nonchalantly, you are welcome to solve it at any time. They all knew how difficult it would be to defeat a huge group like Tianyi. It would not be achieved overnight. It would not be possible in a few years or even 10 years. Pei Zion stopped talking and stared at Li Lei for a long time, like a dangerous tiger. Li Lei said, how about a deal? You let Xiaoling be safe, and after you die, I will let the Pei family be safe. If you let Xiaoling forget you, I can even help the Pei family get out of this period hard times. Xiaoling will not forget me, Pei Zion said firmly. You know, this is the most annoying thing about you, Li Lei said. Pei Zion gave a rare smile, why, do you feel uncomfortable? So what if she marries you? Don't forget, the person she admired at first sight in the orphanage is me, and will always be me. Li Lei wanted to beat him. It is a kind of power that is almost uncontrollable, well, a prehistoric one. He moved his fingers unconsciously, wondering if he would beat a patient to death if he hit him hard. Opposite him, Pei Ziyan slowly took off his suit jacket, ready to beat him at any time. Forget it, Li Lei still put down his fist, don't care about the dying person, he didn't want to be fooled. Now that Pei Ziyan was terminally ill, beating others would be in vain. Xiao Ling probably couldn't bear to talk about him. A strong statement. And what if he injured Pei Ziyan with Li Lei? I'm afraid Xiao Ling will never forgive him in this life. Classmate Li Xiaoli, I was extremely resentful. Over there, Pei Ziyan also stopped beating people. He looked at Li Lei and said, I will not hurt Xiao Ling, and I can even persuade her to live a good life with you, but you are not allowed to do anything to the Pei family after my death. When the Pei family encounters difficulties, please also help. Can you agree to these conditions? You're really greedy, Li Lei muttered in a low voice. How can this be considered greed? Pei Ziyan responded for Tad, you want the people you cherish the most to be safe, and I also want the family I cherish the most to be safe. Transactions of equal value must be fair and reasonable. What a fair and reasonable person, Li Lei laughed, when you say it like this, it actually seems quite reasonable. You are worthy of being appointed to inherit the entire family at the age of 16, Pei Ziyan. If we weren't love rivals, we would still. I really want to make friends with you. I agree to your conditions. The man's deep eyes also showed a hint of gentleness. Thank you. Li Lei put away his playful expression and stretched out his hand. A gentleman, I promise. Pei Ziyan also solemnly stretched out his hand and shook it with Li Lei. A gentleman, I promise. The future destiny of a woman and a family is handed over in the hands of two men. Neither of them is worried about the other party breaking their promise, because, to a certain extent, they are the same kind of people. They both bear heavy responsibilities on their shoulders and have something to protect deep in their hearts, and they do so at any cost. Pei Ziyan watched Li Lei leave. It turns out that the man came here just to tell him to treat Xiao Ling well. If he had to die, then entrusting Xiao Ling to a man like Li Lei for the rest of his life would undoubtedly be the best choice. His chest felt uncomfortable, and Pei Ziyan coughed violently again. Xiao Ling didn't know what kind of agreement the two men had reached. She took care of the baby more carefully than before, because the baby would have to travel with her between her new home and the Pei family for a while. She put on light makeup, brought a bodyguard, and went to the villa area in a nanny car to find Pei Ziyan. The person who opened the door was Zhou's mother. When she saw her, she lowered her eyebrows and said, Miss Ling, sir is not here. Please come back. Xiao Ling asked, where did he go? I just went to the hospital and the doctor said he had gone home. Why didn't he come back? There was a hint of anxiety in her tone. Zhou's mother shook her head. I'm probably going to the company for a meeting. Then I'll go to the company to have a look, Xiao Ling said, thanked Zhou's mother, and headed to the company. Zhou Ma's face showed an unbearable look. Miss Ling, my husband's condition has not been announced to the public. The entire Pei family doesn't know yet. It's too conspicuous for you to go to the company to find him for no reason. Please don't cause trouble for him. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 939. Chapter 939. The handsome young man. Xiao Ling was slightly startled. She had never thought that going to him by herself would cause him trouble. Then, she felt a little uncomfortable and asked Zhou's mother, how is he these days? How is he in spirit? Has he taken medicine and slept on time? Ma Zhou told her one by one. Xiao Ling said, why doesn't he answer my calls these days? Zhou's mother said, Electronic products contain radiation, and the doctor told me not to use them. If you have anything to say, please tell me and I will help you convey it to your husband. Xiaoling thought it made sense and told Zhou's mother, be sure to take good care of him. I heard that the Wei family has a folk remedy to treat cancer, but I have been stopped several times. Please tell him this news. Maybe there will be a glimmer of hope. She also knew that hope was slim, but it was like a dying person grabbing the last straw. If you can, you should try it. Zhou's mother's eyes lit up, really? It should be true, Xiaoling wasn't too sure. It was Wei Shaiyan who told me that her family had developed folk remedies many years ago, but the effect was not very stable. About 1,000 cases could only, to cure one case, and the raw materials are very rare, it is useless to find others, you must go to Wei Lingnan. It's a pity that Wei Lingnan avoided seeing her, and even Wei Shaiyan couldn't think of it. Zhou's mother was very grateful, thank you, no matter what, some news is better than no news. I will definitely tell my husband if he can be saved, you will be his savior. Xiaoling gave a few more instructions, raised her head, glanced at the villa, and then left. The nanny car gradually drove away. Behind the curtains of the study room on the second floor, a man looked out the window, his expression gradually dimming. The dim yellow desk lamp shines like a beam, projecting his tall figure on the rosewood bookshelf and the grey powder-painted wall, stretching and bending into a strange shape, making him look as stooped as an old man. His face is haggard and his eyes are haggard. Zhou's mother walked to the door gently, Sir, Miss Ling is gone. He nodded, very good, bring in the documents sent by Chu Chen and prepare for the 5 o'clock conference call. Zhou's mother couldn't bear it, Sir, you have been dealing with official duties these days, and your body will be overwhelmed. Why do you avoid Miss Ling? With her here, I can still advise you. Pei Ziyan shook his head slightly and said in a more serious tone, go and move the documents. Why doesn't he want Xiaoling to accompany him? Why don't he want her to comfort him all the time and accompany him through the last years of his life? But, he can't. He couldn't let Xiaoling see him looking so haggard, just like a once towering tree withered and dead. He was her god, her faith, and reliance. If she must leave this world, let him exist in her memories in the most powerful image. Rather than the frail and embarrassed man he is now, who coughs after just a few words. He deliberately avoided her. He didn't answer her phone calls and didn't see her, just because he didn't dare to meet her. Zhou Ma looked at him, tears gathering in her eyes, Sir, please take care of your body. Just now Miss Ling said that the Wei family has a folk remedy that may be able to cure your illness. Otherwise, let's go and ask the Wei family for help. Bar. I, Pei Ziyan, don't have the word Chu in my dictionary, he said. If he wanted that remedy, Xiaoling would probably have come to give it to him long ago, but with her background as the phoenix of the Xia family, why would he waste his time on something that she couldn't even get? If you have this energy, it is better to sort out the family affairs, select the next successor of the family head, and ensure a smooth transfer of power. With so many things going on, how could he have time to think about his condition? Pei Ziyan looked at the document attentively again. After looking for him several times, Xiaoling finally came back to her senses. On this day, she came to the villa again, grabbed Zhou's mother and asked, is he avoiding me on purpose? Zhou's mother burst into tears, Miss Ling, please advise him. Sir, he has been working so hard these days. He doesn't even listen to the doctor's words or Mr. Chu's words. The only one who can persuade him now is you. She told intermittently how hard Pei Ziyan worked, pushing himself to the limit. Even normal people could not bear the extremely high work intensity, let alone he was a patient. Zhou's mother knelt down, Miss Ling, please save Mr. Ling. Xiaoling was frightened when she heard this. She didn't expect the situation to be so serious. She quickly asked Zhou's mother, Where is Pei Zion now? I'll go find him. Joe's mother gave her the address of a hospital and said, my husband has been working overtime until late at night the past few days. Last night he suddenly coughed and vomited blood. He was sent there by ambulance. Now his condition has stabilized a little. As I spoke, I was about to cry again. Xiaoling didn't bother to comfort her. She hurriedly got into the nanny car and told the driver to drive towards the hospital. It was a very remote hospital, not one the Pei family was used to, and even dignitaries rarely visited it. On the top floor of the inpatient department, even the VIP ward is in much worse condition than those in large hospitals. The floors in the dimly lit corridors are worn and creaky when you step on them. If it weren't for the two familiar bodyguards in front of the ward door, Xiaoling would have really suspected that she was in the wrong place. The bodyguard tried to stop her. Miss Ling, sir, no one is allowed to disturb you. Xiaoling glared at them fiercely. Is this the first time you've met me? Don't you know I have privileges? After saying that, before the two bodyguards could react, she rushed in. It was very quiet in the ward. In addition to Pei Zion on the hospital bed, there was also a handsome young man standing beside the bed. The young man was wearing an iron gray suit, and his eyes and brows were slightly sharp, somewhat like him. The two were talking and stopped when they saw her coming in. There was a fleeting look of surprise on Pei Zion's expression, as well as a subtle embarrassment. Xiaoling, why are you here? Xiaoling looked at him. He looked really bad. He had lost a lot of weight and was almost out of shape. She couldn't help but think of the man in her memory. That year in the orphanage, under the blooming irises, she looked up at the floor-to-ceiling glass of the dean's office on the second floor. The man was tall and handsome, like a god. How did it end up like this? Her nose was sore and she almost cried. Pei Zion also felt a little embarrassed, so he changed the subject and introduced her. Xiaoling, this is Pei Xiu, the CEO of Emperor Pictures, who just returned from studying in Germany. Emperor Pictures is a subsidiary of Emperor Entertainment. Pei Xiu is a direct subordinate of Pei Zion and has a very high level. After hearing the introduction, Xiaoling was shocked by his youth, but then she thought about it. When Pei Zion was ordered to inherit the entire Emperor Entertainment in danger, he was younger, only 16 years old, so it was not surprising. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 940. Chapter 940 You are not allowed to die. Pei Xiu nodded slightly to her to show friendship. He is very good looking. To be precise, the Pei family are all very good looking. That kind of beauty is different from the stunning look of Xiaoling's previous life, but a feeling of being carefully crafted and restrained. At first glance, she doesn't think it is very outstanding, but if you look closely, you will find that every angle is perfect. Flawless. That is an outstanding gene that only the family of Zhongding and the house of Zhongding can possess after countless generations of survival of the fittest. However, Xiaoling didn't pay much attention to this handsome young man. She still glared at Pei Zion angrily. Why are you avoiding me? Pei Zion did not answer, and only said to Pei Xiu, you go out first. The young man in an iron gray suit bowed slightly to him and retreated. The shabby ward door was closed, and Pei Zion asked Xiaoling, what do you think of him? Xiaoling frowned. What? Pei Zion changed the topic lightly. The weather is nice today. I went for a walk in the small garden in the morning and there were daisies blooming. I remember one year you picked a lot of daisies to make tea, and the whole kitchen almost flooded. In the end, it took Ma Zhou a long time to tidy up before she returned to normal. Thinking about the past, there was a smile on his gloomy face. Xiaoling felt a haze in her heart. Pei Zion, why are you admitted to such a remote and inconspicuous hospital, and why did you call Pei Ziaolet? You are making arrangements for the funeral, right? He whispered, no, Don't think about it. You lied. Xiaoling became angry. Your illness was kept secret at all. Chu Chen and Zhou Ma have repeatedly warned me not to leak the news. Even Feng Kun and the others don't know, but what about you? Meeting Pei Xiu in the ward. Pei Xian, you are arranging a successor, right? He was slightly startled, with a trace of emotion in his expression, as well as an imperceptible sadness. Stupid girl, I've always seen you careless in your whole life, why do you think so much now? Her nose was sore. She was not sensitive to these things before because he and Li Lei were here and she didn't need to worry about it at all. Besides, she doesn't care about power, fame, or fortune. But it was different now. It was about his life and death, and the slightest disturbance could easily stir up her sensitive nerves. She walked to the bed step by step, knelt down half kneeling, and grabbed his cold hand. You are not allowed to find a successor, and you are not allowed to die. He lowered his eyes and looked at her with a soft expression. Okay, I won't die. You swear? I swear. She looked at him distrustfully. The oath you swore is too simple. Make it again. He smiled fondly, and time seemed to have returned many years ago. She had become the willful little girl in her memory, and he was still her god, her eternal hero and patron. Pei Xian reached out his hand and gently brushed the messy hair behind her ears, and said softly, I swear, I will not die. If you violate this oath, just call me, and call Xiaoling a long life, 100 years old and a happy life. Pei Xian. She couldn't hold it back any longer and cried loudly. What kind of oath is this? What kind of oath is this? This doesn't count. It doesn't count, she cried, beating him with her hands. You scoundrel. You lie. You only swore like this because you deliberately tricked me. Pei Xian, Pei Xian. She cried so hard that her heart broke and she lost all strength. Pei Xian stared at her for a long time, with tears oozing out of the corners of his eyes. He tentatively held her in his arms. Xiaoling. His voice was very soft and gentle. I'm sorry that I can't accompany you for the rest of my life. I can't watch your child being born. I can't argue with Li Lei anymore, I'm sorry. She shook her head. I don't want you to say sorry, I want you to get better, do you hear me? He hugged her tighter, neither speaking nor letting go. If it can get better, who doesn't want to get better? However, getting cancer is like a notice from the god of death. How many people can escape? They all understood, so what if they swore an oath? In the face of fate, all words are pale and powerless. The girl in his arms was crying so hard that he almost fainted. After searching his guts, he finally came up with the words to comfort her again. Xiaoling, don't worry, the doctor said there is still a chance for surgery. She stopped crying, raised her tear-stained face, and asked, really? He said, yeah, in fact, the risk of surgery is very high. It is not suitable for patients with lung cancer in the middle and late stages like his. Not only will it damage the vitality, but it is also very likely that the surgery will be ineffective and hasten death. Whether you do it or not, the outcome is already determined. Xiaoling was at a loss. Deep down in her heart, she understood that if things were really that simple, he would not have secretly summoned Pei Xiu without telling everyone to explain the funeral arrangements. But how much she wanted to believe him, it would be great if he could survive. Conflicted, she murmured and asked, why summon Pei Xiu? Pei Xian said, just in case. If something happens to me, I will always find a safe and reliable person to take charge of the family business, and treat you well. There are actually several candidates who can support the Pei family. In the end, he settled on Pei Xiu just because among all the candidates, he was the only one who had no prejudice against her. Many members of the Pei family pride themselves on being famous. Before Xiaoling's identity as a phoenix was revealed, they looked down upon her in every possible way. Pei Xian could not let someone who looked down on her inherit the position of head of the family. Only a person like Pei Xiu, who treats all living beings in the world equally, can continue to take care of her and be her supporter after his death. Even if there is the Li family, there is also the Xia family. But the more backers she has, the better. Pei Xian cherished the long hair of the girl in his arms and told her, "I still have some money and real estate left to you. I have found a lawyer to make a will. It's not much, but it can keep you safe and prosperous in this life." Her heart sank. He had thought everything through. "Pei Xian, you are not allowed to die." Thousands of words can only be reduced to this pale statement. She began to accompany him, visiting him every few days, sometimes in the hospital, sometimes in the villa with red walls wrapped with ivy. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and he would cough and often vomit blood. However, he still went about his official duties non-stop, even busier than before. Xiaoling felt a tearing pain in her heart, and she could hardly stand any more. On this day, she saw that he was sorting out financial reports again. Suddenly, she snatched the thick documents with her hands and said, "Pei Xian, do you want to die? What's more important, your health or your official duties? You can't take a good rest." She was the only one who dared to take the official document from him. He looked at the empty palms, but was not angry. He only said to her patiently, "Xiaoling, return the documents to me, be good. I don't have much time left, so I have to take advantage of the time I can still do this to get the documents back to me. Everything is." "You promised me not to die," she interrupted him, choking. End of this chapter.